Buying a new car in 2025 feels like a luxury, not a necessity. The 25% tariff slapped on cars imported from the European Union is not just targeting high-end models like BMW or Mercedes. It's hitting the heart of middle-class America. Families looking for mid-range sedans like Volkswagen Passat or Peugeot 308 are facing price jumps of $4,000 to $8,000 overnight. Car dealers in Ohio say customers are walking in with frustration, asking why their favorite models are suddenly out of reach. This isn't about tariffs protecting American jobs anymore. It's about who is paying the real price. And the answer seems clearer every day: ordinary American buyers. In 2025, buying a new car in America is starting to feel like a privilege reserved for the few. The latest 25% tariff on cars imported from the European Union, which officially took effect in July, has pushed the price of mid-range sedans and compact SUVs well beyond what most families can comfortably afford. What was once considered a sensible purchase, a reliable Volkswagen Passat or a Peugeot 308, now comes with a price hike of $4,000 to $8,000, depending on the model. These are not luxury vehicles aimed at the wealthy. They are practical family cars that once competed on affordability and fuel efficiency. The immediate reaction across the automotive market has been sharp. Dealers in states like Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, regions that rely on both domestic and imported vehicles, are reporting a noticeable drop in foot traffic and sales. According to a mid-July report from the National Automobile Dealers Association, sales of European-made vehicles fell by more than 12% compared to the previous month. This is not just a seasonal dip or a marketing misstep. It's a direct response to the cost shock that tariffs have created almost overnight. In Columbus, Ohio, a Volkswagen dealer describes the mood bluntly. Before July, we sold about 20 Volkswagens a week. Now we're lucky if we move 5. Says a frustrated sales manager who has been in the business for over 15 years. He adds that customers come in with a sense of disbelief when they see the new sticker prices. Many walk out without even asking for a test drive. The typical negotiation over interest rates or trade-in values is no longer the main sticking point. The bigger hurdle is simply the base cost of the vehicle itself. This shift is changing the dynamic in showrooms across the Midwest. Buyers who once aimed for a mid-range sedan are now settling for used vehicles or cheaper imports from countries not hit by the new tariff. Japanese and Korean brands, which are not affected by the 25% surcharge, are seeing a sudden increase in demand, particularly for models that compete in the same category as European sedans. Leasing options have also become a go-to strategy for those unwilling to pay inflated prices, but still needing a reliable car for work and family. The ripple effects extend beyond the dealerships. Car loan officers in local banks are observing a decline in new auto loan applications, while online marketplaces for used vehicles are reporting record traffic. We're seeing cars that would have stayed on the lot for 60 days sell in under 2 weeks, notes a dealer in Dayton, pointing to the sharp shift in consumer behavior. As the cost of new cars rises, older models, even with high mileage, are becoming more valuable than ever. Another layer to this situation is the slowdown in trade-ins. Traditionally, many buyers offset the cost of a new vehicle by trading in their current car. But with prices surging and financing costs already elevated due to high interest rates, fewer people are making that jump. This in turn is squeezing dealerships that rely on trade-ins to keep their inventory fresh and competitive. Some dealers in Ohio report that their trade-in flow has dropped by nearly 30% since the tariff announcement. The consumer mood is a mix of frustration and resignation. A couple in Cleveland who had planned to buy a new car this summer decided to hold off indefinitely. "We were looking at a Volkswagen Tiguan. It was around $28,000 last year. Now it's closer to $35,000. We can't justify that price, especially with everything else getting more expensive," the husband explains. Their story is becoming increasingly common. Families are simply choosing to stretch the life of their current cars, putting money into repairs and maintenance rather than diving into the new car market. Ohio, often seen as a bellwether for middle-class consumer trends, highlights a broader national reality. In the first month after the tariff took effect, some dealerships reported weekly sales plunging by nearly half compared to the same period in 2024. This isn't limited to big cities. Smaller towns where incomes are more modest are being hit even harder. For many, the idea of upgrading to a new family sedan has shifted from a routine milestone to a distant goal. The big question is whether this tariff will achieve its intended purpose of boosting domestic car sales. So far, the evidence suggests that consumers are not flocking to American-made models in significant numbers. Instead, they're turning to cheaper foreign brands outside the EU or delaying their purchases altogether. Meanwhile, car manufacturers and dealers are caught in the middle, trying to explain price jumps that they didn't create but must now navigate. The 25% tariff on European cars didn't appear out of thin air. It is the result of a strategic push by the US government to strengthen domestic manufacturing, reduce dependence on foreign imports, and force trade concessions from the European Union. In theory, this type of protectionist measure is meant to help American automakers by making imported vehicles more expensive, thus encouraging consumers to buy domestically produced models. But in practice, the story is more complicated, and the reasons behind this tariff go beyond economics. At the core of the decision is a geopolitical tug-of-war. The US has been pushing the EU to adjust its trade policies and provide greater market access for American goods, from agricultural products to technology. The automotive sector, one of Europe's strongest industries, has become a bargaining chip. By imposing a steep tariff on EU-made vehicles, Washington is signaling that it's willing to hit where it hurts most to gain leverage in broader trade negotiations. Germany, home to brands like Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz, has been particularly vocal about the impact of this move. For Germany, the US is a key export market, and this tariff is more than just an economic blow. It's a political message. But there is also a domestic narrative. Policymakers argue that tariffs will push Americans to buy cars made in the US, supporting local jobs and factories. The logic is simple. If imported cars cost significantly more, domestic models become relatively cheaper, and consumers will naturally shift their spending. The problem, however, is that the US auto industry doesn't have enough competitive offerings in every category, especially mid-range sedans and small SUVs, where European brands have traditionally excelled. A Volkswagen Passat or a Peugeot 308 may not have a direct American equivalent with the same blend of price, efficiency, and performance. Instead of redirecting buyers toward American cars, the tariff is pushing them toward used vehicles, leasing options, or brands from countries like Japan and South Korea, which are not affected by the tax. Economic analysts are quick to point out that tariffs, while intended to protect domestic industries, often act as hidden taxes on consumers. A recent report from the Peterson Institute for International Economics highlights that the cost of tariffs almost always falls on end consumers rather than foreign manufacturers. In other words, European car makers aren't absorbing the 25% tariff, they're passing it directly on to American buyers. Tariffs are meant to protect, but they often backfire by raising costs domestically, says Michael Reynolds, a trade policy expert based in Washington. When consumers have to pay thousands more for the same product, it's effectively a tax increase without calling it one. The timing of the tariff also compounds its effects. Interest rates for auto loans are still high in 2025, with the Federal Reserve maintaining tight monetary policy to combat inflation. As a result, financing a new car is already expensive. Adding thousands of dollars on top of the sticker price makes the purchase even less feasible for average households. This double squeeze, higher loan costs, and higher vehicle prices, is why dealerships across states like Ohio, Michigan, and Illinois are reporting a steep drop in sales. There is also the question of whether this move truly benefits American automakers. While companies like Ford and General Motors might see a slight uptick in domestic sales, they also rely on global supply chains that include European-made components. Higher tariffs on finished cars could lead to retaliatory measures from the EU, making it more costly for US car companies to export their own models to Europe. This tit-for-tat dynamic could hurt the very manufacturers the tariff is supposed to protect. It's a dangerous game, notes Reynolds. If Europe responds with its own tariffs, US car exports could face a significant hit, which would negate any domestic advantage. Another key factor behind this tariff is political optics. Trade wars and tariffs have become rallying points in Washington, especially for politicians who want to show they are tough on foreign competitors. In an election cycle, policies like this are often framed as pro-worker and pro-industry. The reality, however, is far less straightforward. Tariffs may win headlines and political points, but their real-world impact often takes months or years to fully unfold. By then, consumers and local businesses are the ones dealing with the fallout. For now, the tariff on European cars is being sold as a temporary measure designed to push the EU to the negotiating table. But there is little indication of how long it will remain in place or what concessions would lead to its removal. In the meantime, the American car market is adjusting in real time, and not in the way policymakers intended. The sharp price hikes on European imports are reshaping consumer behavior, dealer strategies, and even the used car market. The deeper question is whether this is the first step in a broader round of trade measures. Some analysts speculate that tariffs on auto parts or other foreign-made vehicles could follow if negotiations with Europe stall. If that happens, the cost burden on American families could become even heavier, extending beyond the showroom floor to maintenance and repairs. The new 25% tariff on European cars is creating a ripple effect across the United States, reshaping who can afford a new vehicle and how the industry itself operates. While the policy was designed with the intention of protecting domestic automakers and their workers, the burden is falling most heavily on middle-class families, small dealerships, and even secondary industries like auto financing and repair. The cost of buying and maintaining a car, once a predictable part of American life, is now becoming a growing source of financial stress. The hardest hit group is the middle-income consumer, particularly families that rely on mid-range sedans and compact SUVs for commuting and day-to-day life. These vehicles were once considered reliable and affordable options, but the tariff-driven price hikes of $4,000 to $8,000 have pushed them into the category of semi-luxury items. For many households already stretched thin by high rents, rising grocery prices, and elevated interest rates, the jump in vehicle costs is simply too much to absorb. A family in Cleveland, for example, recently shared their story of walking away from a planned purchase of a Volkswagen Tiguan. "We were ready to upgrade our old minivan," the father explains, "but with the price now almost $35,000, it's just not worth going into more debt." Dealerships are feeling the impact just as intensely. In states like Ohio and Michigan, which serve as critical auto hubs, sales of European imports have fallen sharply. Some small dealerships have cut staff or reduced showroom hours to manage overhead costs amid plummeting demand. "We went from 10 salespeople to 6 in less than 2 months, says a dealer in Akron, Ohio. People aren't buying, and that hurts everyone, from the sales floor to the service bay. The slowdown is also straining local economies. Auto dealerships often serve as community anchors, sponsoring local events and employing dozens of workers. When their business contracts, the impact ripples out to other sectors, including advertising, car washes, and even local restaurants that rely on dealership employees for regular business. Another demographic feeling the squeeze is younger buyers. Millennials and Gen Z consumers, many of whom are already burdened by student loans or struggling with high housing costs, are increasingly priced out of the new car market. Instead, they're turning to the used car segment, which has led to a surge in demand for pre-owned vehicles. This spike is driving up used car prices, further limiting affordable options for those who are hoping to find a cheaper alternative. According to a mid-year analysis from Edmunds, used car prices in 2025 have risen by nearly 8% since the tariff took effect, a direct reflection of reduced supply and heightened demand. The maintenance and repair industry is also feeling a secondary impact. European cars often require imported parts, many of which now carry the same tariff penalties. This means even owners of older European vehicles are seeing higher repair bills. A mechanic in Dayton notes, "We're seeing a $200 jump on some replacement parts that used to be routine orders. Customers are shocked when we give them the new quotes." For those who already own a European car, the cost of keeping it on the road has increased, making long-term ownership more expensive than ever. Regionally, the Midwest is one of the hardest-hit areas due to its historical ties to the automotive industry. States like Ohio, Michigan, and Illinois not only sell a large number of European cars, but also have a customer base that often compares European and American models side by side. With European options suddenly less competitive on price, many buyers are hesitant to commit to any purchase. This hesitation is hurting dealers who thrive on steady, predictable turnover of inventory. Meanwhile, coastal cities like New York, Los Angeles, and Miami, where luxury European brands dominate, are seeing a shift as wealthy buyers either accept the new costs or pivot to leasing as a way to avoid long-term ownership expenses. Financial institutions that provide auto loans are yet another link in the chain of disruption. As new car prices rise, loan amounts are increasing, which pushes monthly payments higher. Combined with high interest rates, this makes auto loans less attractive and leads to fewer approvals for borderline credit applicants. Credit unions in Ohio and Pennsylvania have reported a slowdown in new auto loan applications since July, with some institutions tightening lending standards due to market uncertainty. Small business owners connected to the car industry are also being squeezed. Independent car detailers, accessory shops, and even tire retailers are experiencing reduced foot traffic as fewer people purchase new vehicles that typically require additional services. One small tire shop owner in Toledo notes, "New car sales are like the tide. When they go out, everything else feels the pull. We're seeing fewer customers even for basic services like alignments." In the broader sense, these ripple effects highlight how interconnected the automotive ecosystem is. A single policy change, even one aimed at boosting domestic production, affects a wide range of stakeholders, from buyers and sellers to banks and repair shops. While American automakers may gain a slight edge in price competitiveness, it's clear that the pain is widespread, and the benefits are not evenly distributed. The question now is how long these groups can endure the strain. If tariffs remain in place for an extended period, dealerships may face closures, and consumers may hold on to older vehicles for longer, slowing down the entire cycle of auto sales, trade-ins, and financing. The once straightforward act of buying a car has become a case study in how economic policy can upend daily life for ordinary Americans. When policies turn abstract numbers into personal pain, the most honest stories come from the people living through them. On the front lines of the auto market, in dealerships, repair shops, and family living rooms, the tariff on European cars is more than a headline. It is a daily conversation about money, frustration, and choices that no longer feel like choices at all. In Columbus, Ohio, a veteran car dealer named Mark Reynolds leans against an empty showroom floor. "We're getting yelled at as if we raised prices," he says with a tired laugh. "But this is federal policy and we're stuck in the middle. Customers walk in and blame us. They don't want to hear about tariffs, they just want a fair price." Mark's dealership once moved more than 20 Volkswagens a week. In July, after the 25% tariff hit, he sold 6 cars, all of them after heavy discounts and awkward negotiations. "We're cutting into our margins just to stay alive," he admits. "This can't go on forever." Customers feel equally trapped. Sarah Lopez, a single mother of 2 in Cleveland, had planned to replace her aging Honda CR-V with a newer European SUV known for its safety features. After running the numbers in August, she decided to wait indefinitely. "I sat down with my bank and realized I'd be paying almost $600 a month for a car I could have bought last year for $450. I can't justify that, not when groceries and rent are already going up." Sarah now spends weekends browsing local used car lots, hoping to find something reliable before winter sets in. "I'm angry," she says. "They say this is to protect American jobs, but who's protecting me?" Dealership staff describe a shift in tone from curiosity to confrontation. Jason Meyer, a sales associate in Dayton, says conversations with buyers have become more emotional. People feel betrayed. They think we're adding the tariff ourselves, like it's some sneaky fee. "I spend half my day explaining trade policy, and I'm not a politician. I'm just trying to sell cars." He adds that customers are turning to online marketplaces and private sales to avoid dealership markups, which has further hurt showroom traffic. The story is no different in the repair sector. Maria Chen, who runs an independent auto shop in Akron, says the cost of parts for European vehicles has soared since July. We're seeing a $200 jump on some replacement components that used to be routine orders, she explains. Customers are shocked when they hear the new quotes. Some even think we're price gouging, but it's the parts suppliers who are adjusting to the new tariffs, and we have no choice but to pass it on. Maria's shop, which used to specialize in German and French models, is now seeing fewer repair requests for newer vehicles because owners are putting off maintenance or switching brands altogether. The consumer shift is also evident in the stories of first-time buyers. Alex Turner, a 27-year-old teacher in Cincinnati, had been saving for his first new car for over 2 years. He had his heart set on a Volkswagen Golf, but when he saw the updated prices this summer, he walked away. I don't want to be locked into a 5-year loan for something that costs $8,000 more than it should, Alex says. I ended up buying a 2018 model from a private seller. It's not what I wanted, but I couldn't wait any longer. Even long-time loyalists of European brands are reconsidering their options. David Miller, a retired engineer in Toledo, has owned Audis for more than 2 decades. I've always believed in their quality, he says, but this is the first time I've looked at American models seriously. I feel like I'm being forced to switch, not because I want to, but because the price gap is ridiculous. David's story highlights a broader sentiment among buyers who feel that the tariff isn't just economic policy, it's reshaping consumer identity and loyalty. Meanwhile, dealership managers describe a sense of fatigue among their teams. Salespeople thrive on energy and optimism, says Mark Reynolds in Columbus. But when every conversation starts with, "Why is this car so expensive now?" it wears you down. It's not the car's fault. It's not even our fault. But we're the ones facing customers every day. Across Ohio and other Midwest states, the voices of frustration share a common thread, a feeling of being collateral damage in a trade war they never signed up for. These stories reveal the human side of what is often framed as an economic strategy. They show families postponing milestones, workers worried about their jobs, and local businesses tightening their belts. As Mark Reynolds puts it, the tariff isn't hurting Europe as much as it's hurting us. The real question is how long we can hold out before this whole system starts breaking down. The American car market in 2025 is at a turning point. The 25% tariff on European vehicles has become more than a trade policy. It is a stress test on the financial resilience of everyday households and the adaptability of the auto industry. Prices have surged, consumer behavior has shifted, and dealership showrooms across the Midwest are quieter than they've been in years. What was once a smooth cycle of trade-ins, upgrades, and financing has been disrupted, forcing both buyers and sellers to rethink what affordable really means. The broader impact of these tariffs is still unfolding. On the surface, the policy was intended to protect US automakers, but the results have been mixed at best. American brands like Ford and General Motors have seen a slight uptick in showroom interest, yet the surge in demand hasn't been dramatic enough to offset the slowdown in European imports. Many buyers, rather than switching to domestic models, are either holding on to their old cars or turning to Japanese and South Korean brands that aren't caught in the crossfire. The promise of a Made in America comeback is running into the reality of limited options, high interest rates, and stubborn inflation. The economic ripples go far beyond car dealerships. Auto loan providers have seen a decline in new applications, used car prices have jumped due to increased demand, and repair shops are passing higher part costs on to customers. Even peripheral businesses, from car washes to tire shops, are reporting softer sales. In towns where the local dealership is a major employer, reduced sales mean reduced hours, layoffs, and less money circulating in the local economy. For many small communities, this policy feels less like a shield and more like a slow squeeze. At the heart of this issue is a growing sense of frustration among consumers. For middle-class Americans, the ability to purchase a new car has always been tied to a sense of progress. a sign of financial stability and personal achievement. Now, that milestone is drifting out of reach for many. A teacher in Cincinnati who once dreamed of buying a brand new Volkswagen Golf had to settle for a used model, while families in Cleveland and Dayton are postponing their purchases indefinitely. These personal decisions are stacking up, creating a broader slowdown in the auto market. Yet, the situation raises deeper questions. Will the tariffs remain a temporary negotiating tool, or will they harden into a long-term policy? If they stay, how will American automakers respond? Will they fill the gap left by European brands with competitive models, or will the domestic market continue to lose ground to Japanese and Korean manufacturers who are seizing the moment? For now, the answers are far from clear. There's also the political dimension to consider. Trade wars are often as much about messaging as they are about economics. By targeting European cars, Washington is signaling toughness on trade. But the optics of hurting American consumers might become a political liability. If voters continue to see the price of everyday goods, including cars, rise because of tariffs, the pressure to reverse or adjust these policies will grow. The question is whether the current administration is prepared to weather that backlash, or if they see this as a necessary short-term sacrifice for a long-term strategic gain. From the ground up, this policy shift is testing patience. Dealerships are asking how long they can sustain low sales before layoffs become unavoidable. Buyers are asking if they should settle for less, wait for a better deal, or simply drive their current vehicles until they fall apart. Repair shops are wondering if the spike in parts costs will push customers toward cheaper but lower quality alternatives. One dealer in Ohio summed up the mood in a single sentence: "We're not just selling cars anymore. We're selling explanations, and nobody's buying those." His words reflect the uncertainty that hangs over the entire industry. Everyone is waiting for clarity, waiting for prices to stabilize, waiting to see if the trade tensions will ease or escalate. In the end, the story of tariffs on European cars is not just about economics. It is about how global policies ripple down to the showroom floor, to the family kitchen table, and to the monthly budget that is already stretched thin. Whether this moment will lead to a reshaped automotive landscape or simply fade into the next trade dispute is anyone's guess. For now, all that's certain is that the price of driving forward has never felt heavier. Thank you for tuning in to this deep dive on the real cost of tariffs in today's car market. From dealerships in Ohio to families across the Midwest, the pain is clear. Buying a new car in 2025 is no longer just a financial decision, but a reflection of shifting economic tides. If you've noticed these price spikes or have your own story about putting off a car purchase, we'd love to hear it. Stay with us for more insights on how policies are reshaping everyday life. Until next time, drive safe and stay informed.